welcome. We will be getting started shortly. This is the clearance readiness. And I am, as we say in the aircraft industry, flying solo today. So just a reminder of the need that if you're coming in on like a telephone, to please put your name into probably the chat would be the best place to put that. Um, yeah, put that into the chat. And as always, if you have any questions, put that into the Q&A. And we will get started shortly. Chat is disabled. So two people have said chat is disabled because it's in the Q&A. Okay, great. Let me see. Okay, and we got, so people are putting into the Q&A, and let me just see. I think this is in Host Tools. Let's see. Well, I think chat is disabled. So two options. One, put into the Q&A, or the other is to send an email to Kendall Beebe. That's the person you've been getting lots of emails from on this program. And by the way, if you're in Zoom and it's got your name there, definitely don't need your name. But if you're coming in and good for you as an anonymous attendee, or you're dialed in on the phone, just send Kendall an email, and we should get that. In fact, let me just take down one person. And again, I hate to have you do this through the Q&A, but do you see other people's questions, or do you only see your own questions? If someone or someone's could answer that, that would be good. And I've gotten some answers. We see others' questions. Okay, good, great. I got enough. Thank you. All right, well, it's about 3 minutes past, so let's get started. This is what I would call one of the most fun or most scary modules of the whole course, and that's dealing with social media. Again, we can't stay away from the regulations, policies, and procedures. There are real rules here around social media. We'll talk about some best practices and talk about things to watch out for. So again, as always, talk about what we've talked about. All the cool places you can work inside and outside government with a clearance. In fact, the next 4 sessions, you'll get the opportunity to meet people from industry and the government to talk about their experiences and kind of the cool stuff that they're doing. And in fact, most of them are here because they're looking to hire people. So, the perpetual question, how do I apply for a clearance? You don't. You get a job offer that requires a clearance. Well, this is your way of getting job offers. We talked about a broad overview of the clearance process, including a deep dive on the start of the process, the SF-86. We talked about the rules on the clearance process. the regulations on the clearance process, and possibly the second most interesting webinar session, the focus on drugs and other behaviors. We did have, and you've lived through it, probably the most boring one, regulations about classified materials and authorities. But we are good now. Again, a reminder, clearly a number of you know how to use the Q&A box, but if you have any questions, feel free to put them into the Q&A box. Again, I'm going to talk about rules and regulations and good things and bad things, but I am not a lawyer, so I am not giving you legal advice. If you do have a situation or just a curious question, see a real lawyer for real advice. So let's talk about the first definition. What is social media? The quote here is from Seed 5. Remember, we talked about the seeds, the security directives. But I wanted to highlight here that social media is not just what we kind of think of as social media, like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, X, formerly known as Twitter, Tumblr, LinkedIn. But it's really got a very broad definition. Pretty much any user-generated publicly available content. So, for example, Amazon reviews are considered social media. eBay reviews, social media. TripAdvisor, that's social media. A Yelp review or OpenTable, those are all considered social media for the purposes of your clearance. And if you're doing eHarmony or OkCupid or Tinder or Ashley Madison, if you have a public profile, that is all considered social media. So, what drove the need for Seed 5? The collection, use, and retention of publicly available social media information when it comes to your clearance background check. Well, there were two things. One is, if it's publicly available, why not use it? And the answer is there's no reason at all. If you've put something out there for the public, part of the public is the government. So, if you talk about your love of birds and nature in public, then you should not be surprised if the government will learn that you love birds and nature. So basically, if there's no expectation of privacy, then you should not be surprised if the government is looking as well. So if someone posts, I want to take down the US government and I will do it by getting a clearance and access to nuclear materials and kill thousands of people, we probably want the government to take that into account as the government adjudicates whether this person is eligible for a clearance. Now, a thing I'd like you to think about is, you see that picture, social media posting. A person loves nature, loves birds. Is there anything kind of off in the picture? And the answer is yes. So you might have seen that he has two hands. But if you look closely, you'll notice that the arm of that person is embedded in the rock. As you might be able to read at the bottom, this is a generative AI image that I generated using Adobe Firefly. Now, if you want to understand why that happens, you can take our AI class. But this image gives me the opportunity to cover an important concept with regards to social media. What the people can see freely, like the man, the bird, the rock, that's all fair game for the investigators. What is hidden in the rock, so what is in your private profiles, that is not available to the investigators. So are there limits to the investigation? This is kind of the other part of seed 5. So the first thing is there is no compulsion, meaning, remember I said they cannot look at what's private. Well, they cannot ask you for your password so they can poke around. They cannot log into a private account. They cannot do anything that would disclose non-publicly available social media. They're also not allowed to game the system, so to speak. So in a lot of these social media platforms, there's public information, private to your friends, and private. Well, they can't game the system by setting up a profile and telling you to friend their account. They're not allowed to do it surreptitiously either, to have a fake profile and get you to friend that account. They're basically not allowed to bypass the privacy controls. In fact, this is such a no-no. If in an interview or something, think of it as a test. Think of it that they're trying to see if you will report bad activity to your FSO, because it's going to be one of two things. Either they're doing something bad and they need to be stopped, or they're kind of checking out, if you're in an awkward situation, will you report it? And clearly, if you're applying for a job, ratting out the people who are interviewing you might be a hard thing to do, but you really do want to report that. Now, submitting the SF-86 is the trigger. So the first bit about that is if you are a US person, and clearly we talked about what it takes to get a clearance, you probably are a US person, they're not supposed to be looking or archiving your public profiles. So applying on the SF-86, though, that includes your consent for them to look at public information. And a reminder, there's this concept of continuous verification. If you're clean and then you post some weird stuff, government is probably through automated means going to be scraping that, going to be looking at that. The government will know. So keep that in mind if you have social media. So now another part of the seeds is, what if they found something? And I'm going to give a lot of examples, personal examples from LinkedIn. So if you search for Eric Berger on LinkedIn, I'm not the only one. So just because they find something, the first thing they have to figure out is it really you? In fact, let's say they say, yeah, there's something weird, and we're pretty sure it's you. That alone cannot be the sole reason to deny you a clearance. They need to find something else. If you friended a terrorist, that's a fact. But then they need to see, well, are you friendly to that terrorist? Are you sympathetic to that terrorist? Are you looking to overthrow the government? Those are all reasons to deny your clearance. But the fact that you happen to have a connection to a known terrorist, that alone would not disqualify you. However, something like that could point to undeclared activities, that you really are sympathetic to the terrorists, or that you could be compromised. It's a real connection, and that you may be coerced into being sympathetic to that cause. So let's look at who uses social media. So if you look on Facebook, they're your friends, your relatives, your classmates, thieves, stalkers, fishers, and foreign intelligence agencies. If we look at X, they're your followers, and thieves, stalkers, fishers, and foreign intelligence agencies. LinkedIn, they're business contacts, I think for a lot of you in your current phase, possibly looking at current or potential employers, when you have been working for a while, maybe they're current and potential employees, and thieves, stalkers, fishers, and foreign intelligence agencies. So you notice, yeah, there are a lot of legitimate uses for social media, but we have to be mindful that there are some nefarious elements using social media as well. And so a key point here is to not make it easy for the bad people. So there are a couple of basic suggestions. One is basic cyber-physical security. If you post on Facebook, I'm on deployment in a faraway place for the month, you've basically told thieves, hey, your house is going to be empty. And if they can figure out where you live, you might come home to an empty apartment. Or I'm going on vacation to northern Israel. Well, stalkers know where to look for you. So that can be risky. And then, of course, the classic stuff, printing your ode to your first pet spot. Well, the fishers now know the answer to what is your first pet. Clearly, part of the answer there is never, ever, ever use real information on these, what's the name of your first pet? What's your mother's maiden name? What school did you go to? And part of that is because of this, because when that data gets compromised, it can make a spear phishing attack pretty easy for the fishers. Let's talk about some other things you might want to not want to post. This is a really cool picture with what looks like fireworks coming out of her hand. And yeah, that's cool. But if you post a picture of you looking totally smashed, really help or hurt investigators in their determination of whether you have good moral character and trustworthiness. Especially if you're looking drunk, that might be, well, how did you answer the SF-86 on alcohol abuse? And hey, that the government's going to be looking at this stuff and you're posting that you're drinking. In fact, for that matter, will this help or hurt you get any job? To protect him, one of my former students who does have a good job, but his LinkedIn photo when he started working for me was of him standing on a table in a bar with a shot glass raised high and his tux shirt open with the tie. I was like, do you really think that's going to help you get a job? And then he went for the more traditional job kind of picture. And again, a picture like that does not convey a trustworthy, level-headed individual. So he did, take it down, got a job, not in the government sector. So there are some things that you are likely not allowed to post. And basically, these are all things you run by your FSO. So, here's one thing. You can say that you have a TSSCI, but you're really not supposed to say what kind of compartmentalized information is. You're really not supposed to say what agency you're getting it from, and you're almost absolutely not supposed to post what you're working on. And again, this could be like if this FUBAR project, if the existence is top secret, clearly posting it would be a major, major breach. So it's not even you're not allowed to. You've just, triggered a spill. By the way, FUBAR is a DoD technical term spelled FUBAR. Look it up. Shouldn't talk about it on here. FUBAR spelled this way is an MIT technical term, meaning pretty much the same thing. Now, all publications are subject to basically whoever gave you your clearance, whether it's DoD or one of the civilian agencies or DOE. And now publications include your curriculum vitae, if you're on the academic side, your resume is a publication, and what you put up as a social media CV, that's a publication. Now, does this mean you need to send your CV to the DoD and they have a special mailbox for, doing uh, clearance of documents? Probably not. You talk to your FSO, and if you, in fact, don't mention it's TSSCI or whatever, you're probably good. But if you start treading into who you're working for and all that, do check with your FSO and they can help you decide whether to submit it for publication review. And again, to reiterate, because who knows, maybe there is a secretivist agency, a double super secret agency or a FUBAR project. I made them up hoping that they are safe examples. So let's look at what happens when people do not kind of follow these recommendations. So this is operational security. This was early in the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And basically, the Ukrainian people put up fake profiles of attractive women and posted it on Russian social media and basically saying, hey, we're free and we like Russian men. And basically they would reply. And the next thing they knew, they got blown up, so not good OPSEC. Another bit of the OPSEC was they were asking, hey, send us a picture, you handsome man. And they sent a picture, and on that picture was metadata. And part of that metadata was GPS coordinates, very convenient for sending a drone or a bomb. So really, you shouldn't publish pictures, but if you do, you want to make sure that that data is taken out. If there are other people in the picture, blur them out. I have not dealing with classified or security, but with recovering children being abused. And from a picture of a child in a playground, we were able to determine, like literally, we were able to figure out what playground it was and where that child was being held. And that child did get liberated. But so that's how we catch bad guys. But remember, that's how bad people can find you. So again, the real thing is to not publicly post pictures if you can avoid it. Another OPSEC oops. This was a few years ago, but basically, I think it was Garmin had this partnered with a company, Strava, that basically it lets you keep track of where you ran. I mean, I used to do this. I used to use Map My Run. And then it's social media. You could share it and show people, hey, look where I'm jogging. Well, that was great, except when you are a Marine in Afghanistan going for a jog. Thing number one, it shows where a bunch of Marines are. That's kind of that where you see all those rectangular lines. And by the way, you see that there's kind of like a jogging track that is at the perimeter of the base. Really, really bad. Huge failure of operational security. So by the way, when you work at an agency that says, take off your tracking watch, put your phone away, whatever, it's not because they're being annoying, that they want to take away your cool toys. It's to protect you. So that's also what's known as pattern of life. Where do you go to work? Where is your home? Where do you go out to eat? Where do you go jogging? That's pattern of life. Most of these companies are private companies. Uh, and when I say a private company's privacy policy is not worth the paper it is written on, especially at an asset sale when that company gets acquired, I would want to remind you that privacy policies are not written on paper. It's not worth anything. So again, you really don't want to share pattern of life information. And these are all kind of life best practices, not just for people with clearances, but people with clearances are targets. They're more targets than just kind of the average person. Now, I've mentioned terrorism a few times. Now, this is a document that actually comes back to 2005. Uh, it's known as the Manchester document. It was a document found when British security services raided an Al-Qaeda safe house in Manchester City. It does get bandied about as, ooh, Manchester document talks about why you shouldn't post stuff to social media. Well, that was 2 years before Facebook, 2 or 3 years before X, Twitter. That came out before social media, but it talks about open source intelligence collection. And they basically said what many security agencies have known, that you can get a lot of information from open source sources like social media. And in fact, the Al-Qaeda handbook related a story attributed to John Foster Dulles. If you're here in the Northern Virginia area, that's, yes, the person who Dulles Airport is named after. He was first head of the CIA, and he bemoaned that he had to pay a king's ransom to get information about the Soviet Union because it was a totally closed society, very expensive, very dangerous to have officers there, extremely dangerous for the sources. And there was basically no trustworthy information there. And he said, I have to do all that, but the KGB, they just buy a copy of the New York Times and they know what's going on in the United States. So this is kind of an old issue, but social media makes it even more of an issue. So if you really do have to use social media, you should at the very least make your profile private. Now, again, it's understandably counter to the purpose of LinkedIn and Twitter. So again, and we'll talk a little bit about this in a little bit, be careful who you friend. Be careful who does get to see kind of that next level of information. Again, be very careful of what you post. Things like location information, pattern of life information, who your loved ones are. Remember, as a person with a clearance, if you have very valuable information to an adversary, they will not think twice of kidnapping your children or threatening a spouse in order to compromise you. So for their protection, you want to be very careful of what you post. So it does get worse. And so here's a question. I'm going to hope it works. I haven't tested it on Zoom. But what can you do if there's 30 seconds of voice on social media? And I guess the race is, were you able to hear that? And you're not hearing audio. Yeah, I'm sorry. Uh, when this gets posted, you'll see this link here, and you can click on the link and hear it. But it did really sound like a fourth grader of Hispanic heritage. His parents started crying when they heard it because it sounded just like their dead child. And as one of the participants posted, and I think you could see that one. Oh, share computer audio. It's worth it because this is kind of a tearjerker. Advanced sharing options. Who can share? Panelists share. Oh, I guess that might be a thing I had to do at the beginning. Let's see, maybe it's on audio. Nope. Yeah, sharing computer audio would have been the greatest thing to do. I am not seeing any other way of doing it. So yeah, apologies about that. And it did time very nicely with, you know, Master Garcia's little thing there. Uh, yeah, we'll do that. You get to stare at me because we are also running a little bit ahead of schedule. And we can see if there's extra credit in there. So let's see. That's sharing. No. So how about share? Share sound. Awesomeness. There you go. You are going to get to do this. Okay. You know what? Whoops. Yeah, I can't do it because it wants me to reboot, so I'm not going to do that. So we are back here. Let me just make sure I've got so let's just get this going again. Well, actually, just for grins.
I'm a fourth grader at
Let's
Robb
see, any
Elementary
luck this
School in
time?
Uvalde, Texas. Or at least I was, when a man with an AR-15 came into my school and killed 18 of my classmates, 2 teachers, and me.
Okay, well, either you heard it or you didn't. You're hearing audio now, and yeah, it is kind of like you could imagine. You can imagine. Actually, do you hear me talking now? Let's just make sure we got it all going well. Yes. Okay. Great. Thank you. Uh, and the person who wrote this article, Joanna Stern, she has a number of articles on generative AI, which I would encourage you to look at if you have access to the Wall Street Journal. And the Wall Street Journal is pretty inexpensive for students. So if you can get at that, it's worth, because she also talks about being able to fool her bank and almost fooled her father. So yes, and someone had said, wow, they can use AI to clone your voice. And the point is, not only can they clone your voice, but it didn't take much, because that was part of the amazing thing about it, is that there really was only like 30 seconds of voice for this particular child, and they were able to recreate it. And as one of you just pointed out, yeah, that had some AI artifacts, but imagine if you had 2 hours of voice to play with, as well as video. So hopefully that gives you pause. Uh, and really kind of the bottom line, in a sense, it's too late for me. I've got all sorts of my talks online. This is online. So I'm toast. But if you don't have a social media presence yet, and especially if you're thinking about uh, a job that requires a clearance, especially at what I call the paranoid agencies, like the NSA is a historically paranoid agency, FBI is a historically paranoid agency. You might want to second guess whether the costs of all of these threats outweigh the benefits. And let's talk about another cost. Um, you all have seen me and know what a fine rockin' guy I am. These are all images of people who reached out to be my friend. Uh, and these are some of the introductory texts that they would send me. Uh, right now, I'm going through a spate of getting identical introductory texts. It's kind of laughable. Uh, all I can say about this is report, report, report. One thing I have learned is your report goes nowhere unless you get like a phone number or an email address or Telegram account and a name. I used to, send across when I would first get the request to connect, and basically I was told there's nothing they can do with that. For most of you early in your career, I would just ignore the request, but that's up to you. Another thing, and one of you have done this where they reached out to me saying, hey, I'm in your class, let's connect. And I responded back in kind of a cryptic way. And by the way, I responded back looking up their university address. So that's called out of band. So in fact, I did have this one time when I said basically my standard response is thanks for your interest. What are you looking for? If it's a bot, they don't know how to digest that. If it's a troll farm, they then say, I really think you're handsome and I would love to try new things with you. So now I know that this is a social media attack. It's literally a kind of attack. But sometimes it's, hey, I'm taking your class and really want some job advice. Uh, doing that, closing that loop out of band, so not on LinkedIn, but over email or something like that. Because one of the responses I got from thanks for your interest, what are you looking for, was I'm terribly sorry you've been bothered. My account was taken over. Here's a screenshot. Uh, basically we don't need to connect. So accounts do get taken over. I've twice encountered impersonation. One time it was laughably bad. But one time it was a pretty good impersonation. So do be very careful with who you link with. So my rules of thumb, I only connect with people I've met in the physical world. Um, quite often I will get someone who says, oh, hey, we've got lots of mutual connections. So then I'll ask one or more of those mutual connections, hey, do you know Jake? And 90% of the time they'll say, who? So a lot of people just accept all these connections, again, especially on LinkedIn, of people they really don't know. Uh, one of the side benefits of my having this rule is it means when somebody asks me, hey, do you know Jane? I can say, oh yeah, she's one of my students and had like this interesting interaction. Because yes, for those people who my friends, my real friend says, who, I just block them and say I don't know them, which generally reduces their standing on the platforms. And again, as I said, confirming out of band. even this friend of a friend thing, I will do that out of band. It also has another benefit for me who's been at this for quite a while. It's an excuse to get back together with people, my real friends. So you might want to consider that. Although these two videos that we won't go through now. It is about 26 minutes for both of them. The first one's about 18 minutes long, second one about 8 or 10 minutes long. The first one is targeted to undergraduates, but graduate students, could learn from it as well. It's basically about how easy it is to be recruited by a foreign power. In this example, what they're talking about is a student who spends a semester abroad, falls in love with the country, basically unwittingly gets recruited. There's, a person he hangs out with. And they're like, hey, I wanted to introduce you to this friend of mine. And the friend is like, wow, you've got like a really bright future. We want to stay in touch. And then they start grooming them and, saying, hey, or why don't you apply to the State Department? And then he like fails the Foreign Service exam. They're like, oh, we're really disappointed, but how about you apply for the CIA? And I won't ruin the ending of it, but based on a real story. Nevernight Connection is more targeted towards researchers, professors, people in industry. But again, the value, even if you're an undergraduate at one of the community colleges, again, how you get sucked in without really noticing it. And this was a case where someone they started out doing legitimate things, and then they slowly but surely reel him in. The subjects of both of these movies, I think, are still in prison. So the social media summary, step number one, don't use social media. I know that's kind of hard in this world. So if you do, be careful of what you do. Again, don't post where you're at right now. Careful of who's in the picture. Careful of divulging your family. Careful of when you're going to be away. And be mindful that, the people, and I'll again use LinkedIn, they're not just your business associates, your potential employers, your potential coworkers, your potential employees. There are also thieves, stalkers, fishers, and most important and relevant to clearance preparedness, foreign intelligence agencies. So, bottom line is don't use it, but be careful using it. So that brings us to the end. As promised, we're going to have 4 guest speakers in August, September, October, November. We're going to publish the schedule of who's going to be speaking when, but we're actually looking at non-traditional agencies. So things like FinCEN, the National Security Council, OFAC, as the State Department, USAID. There are a number of jobs at like USAID that require a clearance. As well, people from industry, both traditional defense contractors, but also like cloud providers. They have roles for cleared personnel. So with that, if I haven't totally scared you away from social media, I failed. No, just joking. If I haven't given you reasons to be mindful of social media, or you have any questions or experiences, please feel free to post them in the Q&A. And while I'm waiting for that, again, a reminder, if you are in anonymously or in over the telephone, please email Kendall. Again, if you have a name in here, a couple of people did say, "Hey, here's my name," and it says your name. So we get that from the roll call. Uh, so one person asked, how do I think privacy, and by that I am going to guess privacy settings, how should that affect how you communicate with known people, like people in your family or others that you have you know who they are. Uh, so first thing is to understand the risks and the characteristics of the different communications applications. So Signal is, or at least as of now, and to what we know, is a very secure, really end-to-end encrypted, no metadata stored, messages really disappear messaging application. Although I would remind people, especially if you're overseas or get posted overseas, the fact that you have Signal on your phone in some countries is enough to get you arrested. Texting. If it's traditional SMS or MMS, you should be aware that the phone company is required to archive that. I think at least 30 days. Most will keep it for 2 years. And again, texting includes metadata such as location. Email. This is why if you look at my website, I teach people how to do encrypted email. It's for the most part in plain text. Anyone monitoring packets going by gets to see your email. That all said, we know the boundaries of what T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T, what their requirements are in terms of storing text messages. They're also subject to privacy laws that they get big fines if they divulge your texts, basically to anything other than a lawfully executed subpoena. But do be aware with texting, there is a technique called SIM swapping, where a bad actor can basically take over your account. I would urge people to Google SIM swapping. All the carriers allow you to lock your phone. It's a real pain. If you lose your phone, it means you have to pretty much show up at a store to get a new SIM. But especially since quite a lot of services use text message for two-factor authentication. There is a case where someone lost, I believe, $50 million because of a SIM swap, and that's still working its way through the courts. They're saying the phone company's liable because, another person got their phone. The phone company is saying, hey, look, even NIST says don't use SMS text messaging for two-factor authentication for high value purposes. And clearly, if you have an account with $50 million in it, that's high value. To me, that's high value. So I hope, and if that didn't quite answer your question, feel free to elaborate. Somebody made the comment, they don't like to use LinkedIn, and it's a tough job market out there. And again, that's why I'm giving all of these advice of how to use it, because yeah, it's kind of hard to navigate the job market with LinkedIn on the one hand. On the other hand, if you have your sites on NSA, they will really like it if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, or your LinkedIn profile is pretty much just person, no picture. Uh, and yes, it's best not to do it, but like we said about LinkedIn, sometimes you can't avoid it. Yes, and person put in, yeah, the big thing was this Bitcoin was what got taken. Um, so this question, how much does Facebook, Google, and Microsoft and Apple track you, even if you don't have social media? Well, this is the subject of what the Federal Trade Commission has made it their mission. Um, Apple is probably the least worst, and to date, Facebook is the worst. The commenter put in, Facebook can create a shadow profile of you even if you don't have an account. And even at the time we didn't do it, but after I left the company, they made an acquisition, and they're one of these companies that tries to build profiles of people and then sell it. They mostly sell it to advertisers, but they also sell it to governments. And again, that's kind of the open source thing. And it'll probably end up going through the courts, especially as the Federal Trade Commission tries to shut it down. Is that publicly available information, or is the act of compiling it going beyond publicly available information? So yes, be paranoid, very paranoid. Uh, don't use Facebook or Google or Microsoft or Apple, but nobody, it's a hard job market out there. You can't not have a phone. You can't not apply to a job on the internet, which means you can't not have the internet, which means you can't not be tracked. There are things like instead of using Edge or Safari or Chrome, again, probably least worst would be Firefox, but better would be DuckDuckGo, the DuckDuckGo browser. Best would probably be something like Brave. So there are technologies to cover your tracks. You might be familiar with the Tor browser, Tor being the onion router that gets its name from kind of mixing up your traffic with other people's traffic and shuffling it all over the internet. The problem is a lot of terrorists, criminals, and child pornographers use Tor. So that might be a flag. Again, hopefully you'd be able to explain that to the investigation, but that's a thing to be aware of. So questions have slowed down, but I'll leave it open for another minute for any other questions. Okay, maybe I'll leave it open for another 30 seconds. What might they use? Actually, actually a good second question. What might they use? I'm trying to figure out the they. Is that what we should use, or I didn't quite understand that. The other question is how long to wait to apply for an agency after marijuana use? Well, federal law is at least 1 year. So that's like the minimum. Then it depends on the agency. FBI and Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms is typically never ever, but again, that's typically. The others do the minimum 1 year. Others might be 3 to 5 years. And if you look back at the marijuana use webinar, I do go into some specific examples on, and again, I'm not a lawyer, so it's not agency policy, it's my experience. Your mileage may vary. Kind of unlikely that ATF would start all of a sudden take someone who just got clean. but the other agencies might get stricter, especially in a tight job market. It's a way they can reduce number of applicants they look at, or loosen their requirements to get, especially on the cyber side, get more qualified personnel. So yeah, what tools do hackers and phishers use? They basically, the biggest one is what's called social engineering. And that's where the generative AI gets scary, where, you know, they'll call your bank and use your voice. They'll call your family. Hey, I'm in jail in Mexico. Send me some money. And now it really sounds like you. You know, it used to be that it would be a text or something like that, or it's like, hey, you know, they asked me to call you, but now it's in your voice. So one technique for combating that is to come up with a password that you don't post anywhere on social media, and it's not the name of your first pet, so that if someone calls your family, they can say, hey, yeah, what's the password? Or not even ask that. You know, you just know that they're going to be looking for that password. So if they don't hear it, they know something is up. Uh, so yeah, um, I guess. Any other questions? So with that, apologies for the sound, but now thank you, all the people, and it'll be in the logs, all the people who helped me out with sharing the sound. I want to thank you for your time today, and looking forward to seeing you in August. Again, one last time, send an email to Kendall if for some reason we don't have your name from the roster. And got a couple thank yous. Thank you all so much, and see you in a month.